Hey, all you Ethicuties and the 40% of you who have still not subscribed to the Ethicsverse, what the heck's wrong with you? This is the coolest place to be every Tuesday at noon Eastern, especially if you think fixing our healthcare workplaces can fix our world. We have a special healthcare Ethicsverse for you today with the one and only Leslie Boles. Let's get a massive round of applause. You're like a crowd favorite, Leslie, not just with me, but with everybody in the Ethicsverse. So happy to have you back. Today, we're going to be talking about AI risk, FCA liability, and the gaps that are already costing organizations. So as we get started, I'm going to run through some announcements. They're going to be lickety-split here, okay? But drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat. Of course, we're giving away tons of credits for HRCI, for the Compliance Certification Board, and for SHRM. We are, thanks to JOA, a certified or an accredited provider for CCB, which is awesome. And we're giving away this book by my good friend, Matt Silverman. Matt Silverman is one of the smartest people I've ever met, and he wrote this really great book called The Champions Network. And so this book is all about how you can leverage other people, other ethical people inside your organization, whether they're managers, whether they're people on the front lines, to build a more ethical culture and create this sort of intelligence network throughout your organization. So you, again, can make better bets with your time and drive more impact. So if you have not checked that out, you should go to Amazon and buy it, or just get mad active in the chat today because we're giving away 5 of them. And we are giving away also, coming out soon, it's getting down to the finishing touches. This is the best benchmark report we've ever put out. As you know, we're the only provider in the space that also puts out a healthcare benchmark report, because we love you. About 80% of our client base are healthcare organizations. So we have a large enough data set to complement the regular benchmark report, so you can see what's going on in healthcare. So benchmarking is a critical element of any program. If continuous improvement is important to you, which now is the time to be on your continuous improvement horse. So stay tuned for that. You should be able to sign up for that, and that should be coming out shortly. Everyone's going to be talking about it, though, so don't worry about it. You're not going to miss it. I also wanted to share with you guys this new tool that's coming out. I'm going to be talking about this for the next few weeks here because it is almost game ready. We're looking for a few, a handful of beta users to make sure that we have this thing dialed in. And of course, anybody who does it, they'll get a deal if they want to go ahead and use it. But this is not a sales thing as much as it is trying to advance our profession forward. We have developed the first AI native third-party risk platform. And so the reality today is that a lot of our third-party risk process takes a lot of time. Sometimes it's 2 months per assessment. Sometimes there's so much manual intake. There's a false positive overload. There's regulatory scope, which is exploding. And there's a lot of uncertainty that lives in this process that takes a lot of resources, takes a lot of time, and is many times very, very manual. So what we're changing with our approach is we're not just kind of slapping some, like I say, some AI bumper stickers on the car. We've built this from the ground up to have a true AI backbone. And what this is going to allow for is much faster automated intake with intelligent screening. You can build into the platform what your risk screening is across vendor types and across impact categories, and apply in real time the right algorithms. You can sort of document your mind in the system so that it can apply the right intelligence in real time and drive AI risk tiering. We can auto send questionnaires that is automatically going to update things. And as we were having conversations in the marketplace, people were constantly talking about how much time they're spending on false positives and how much time they're spending trying to ring fence and report out to the various sort of stakeholders who have an interest in third-party risk the reports. So automatically in the system, this is the kind of system you can just bring to the beach and you just kind of kick your feet up, drink out of a coconut, click some buttons, and your whole third-party risk process is dialed in. So board-ready reports that are automatically going to spit out the information you want for the various different stakeholders. So if you're interested in this, we'll be sharing throughout the presentation some screenshots from the thing. In the next week or so, we're going to have probably a session on a Wednesday where we'll be showing this to see if you think you're interested in being part of this beta group. But the big kind of tagline for this thing is go from 2 months to 2 minutes. So join the beta. There is a QR code here. I encourage you to sign up for it. We're already starting to talk to folks who have signed up so that they can see what it is and see if they want to participate in it. So this will be shared throughout, and I encourage you to check it out. Third-party risk is a massive resource, drains a lot of resources from us, and a lot of our risk lives there. So it's a really important piece of our programs that is really ripe for a really kind of next-gen AI approach. All right. Also want to talk about our smart disclosures. So there are myriad use cases for our smart disclosures. Like I'm always talking about, we have to get risk intelligence into our system. And so our smart disclosures are being used across several different use cases right now that I want to share with you. If you are doing your disclosures, whether it's on an annual basis, and you're just doing spreadsheets, you're probably wasting a lot of time, and there's probably a lot of risks that are falling through the cracks. So when you can automate that and multiply out the different inroads for different types of risk intelligence, whether it's through retaliation or whistleblower protection, cybersecurity or emerging threats, safety and incident reporting, which a lot of folks are using in a hospital setting for slips and falls, having sort of an evergreen place that people can, report these kinds of things that feed directly into your case management system, allow you to automatically route these to the eyeballs that can take action on them quickly. So if you're interested in that, which you should be, hit the demo button down below and we will get started. Also want to introduce or reintroduce, if you have not met her, the one and only Leslie Boles. How's it going, Leslie?
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Very good. So Leslie has a ton of experience in our space. She has spent years in the healthcare compliance space. She is a fan favorite. She has this great intersection of coding and auditing and compliance. And today we're going to walk through contractual provisions that are missing from a lot of AI vendor agreements. Every person we talk to is asking, what are you doing with AI? I think AI is top of mind, both from a how can I leverage it to do my work better perspective, but also what don't I know and what risks can I try to see around the corner around with respect to AI. And so we're going to talk about what reckless disregard looks like in an AI context and how to build a better compliance strategy when these regulatory maps kind of keep changing below our feet. Leslie, tell us a little bit about your organization's review, of course, and then Nexari. I love you. You're always doing something. You're always moving around. Give us a little rundown of the organizations that you head up, and then we'll dive in here.
Sure. So Review Healthcare is a healthcare consulting firm that was launched at the end of 2021. And so it focuses on compliance advisory services. So our services range from coding compliance, audit, billing compliance, audit services. We also have physician advisory services. We have compliance program implementation, your traditional, just general compliance services that we offer, from policy to education. I'm just really proud of how we've just grown our service lines from a compliance standpoint. And then Nexari Solutions, which we launched middle of last year, but officially took off the first of this year, which is essentially an AI consulting firm, an AI implementation service firm. And so we offer a wide array of services related to artificial intelligence with healthcare organizations, as far as helping them to implement, to assess whether they're truly ready for some of the tools that they are looking to implement in their organizations. And then we offer some general consulting around artificial intelligence as it relates to the many, many questions that people have. And so we're excited. We've built out this amazing company, and then we have great expertise that we are just providing across the US. So we're excited about both of those.
I love it. I'm excited about these avatars because you, as usual, look like a model and I look like the new Ayatollah, which is great. So the big takeaways for today are we're going to learn about, like I said, what reckless disregard looks like in an AI context. We're going to discover what AI vendors aren't telling us, what that hallucination liability is, which is a big one. I've read a paper over the weekend that there's no way for AI, mathematically to not hallucinate. And that's something that, Sam Altman and, that other guy are not going to be pushing forward. You got to dig deep into the bowels of their research to uncover that. And then we're going to talk about the balance of, the multitude domestic and international AI compliance policies. So let's start out diving in here. For compliance officers, a lot of folks that we talk to and that I talk to, and then I'm sure also on your side, Leslie, they feel like they're already a little bit behind this AI curve. Where do you think the most urgent gaps are right now? And what's the one thing you would tell them to focus on first? Because there's a lot of claims being made in the market. There's a lot of noise out there. And we are living on the sort of the front lines in the real world. And we got to kind of close these gaps, and we got to manage these ever-changing risks inside of our organizations.
Yeah, so I think the biggest risk is not the identification of the software, because there's plenty, right? There's vendors coming out every day with new tools to make things easier. That's supposedly the driving force behind AI. But one of the things that I have been talking about a lot is just education and policy. And education is a wide arena, because one of the things that I've been seeing is a lot of organizations are not prepared for what these AI tools now bring. And mainly because I think that everybody is still trying to operate AI within the confines of the way we deliver healthcare the same way. And it doesn't work that way. So for instance, like if you bring in a new CDI software, AI software that now propels your clinical documentation improvement program, you now have to think about what does that mean for the people who work in the CDI program now? How is that going to change it? How do you re-implement them? And even when we use the word, a lot of the words that are being used are downsize, or we're reducing the workforce because of AI technology. How do you prepare your staff for that? What does that mean for them? What new skills do they have to develop? And so I think that education piece is a big piece that's missing, just on a basic level. How will this change my current model? And then from a compliance standpoint, a lot of people are not thinking about policies at all. They're bringing in these new technologies, which look great on paper. They do all the things that they say they're supposed to do, but then you have policies that contradict essentially the entire process now, right? And so you're not evaluating that. And how do you get people to comply if you have policies that contradict with each other? So I think education is a huge foundation across the board. Not only just educating yourself on the types of AI that are out there. I think we've beaten that like a dead horse. If you don't know the difference between a large language model and generative AI and
Get out.
You know the difference
Just kidding.
of automation, I mean, it's not to put you down, but it's time to move past that, right? We now have to look like, where's the integration process? How do we implement? How do we train our staff, right? Which also helps with the fear that's bubbling forward when it comes to AI tools being implemented. So there's a lot to do there.
So, I think a lot of people struggle with like, where do they get started? Would you just advise people to just start kind of jumping in the pool and swimming around to see what some of those capabilities are? Do you think, it's hard to like educate sort of at scale if we ourselves are not educated. And I feel like some of those gaps from like a proliferation of like AI, use capabilities or like common sense that we want to push out through education. Sometimes we can't even like cross that bridge because we ourselves feel some aversion to it. We're still thinking about, the hallucinations, which obviously are still a risk or whatever. Or, that lawyer who lost his license. I don't even know if that's apocryphal or if that's real anymore, but like a lot of people still point to that thing. And it's, I just find a lot of us in this space kind of treat it as a bit of a third rail, and it's caused us to not kind of jump in and sort of start to explore it. What would you tell somebody to like grab the reins of this AI thing? Like, how should they do it? Reading, Ethicsverse, of course, but like, what else? What do you think?
Right. So one of the biggest things that I'm seeing that has been really successful are committees, whatever you want to call them. Some people don't want to form another committee in their healthcare organization, but I don't care if you're small, big, medium, in between. You should be having a committee or conversations around, okay, what do we want to achieve with AI? Where are our biggest areas that we can utilize its strengths? Where are our weaknesses as an organization, right? If you have a huge problem with data today, incorrect data, AI is just going to put a huge flashlight on that. And so the first part is having honest conversations. I don't know if many of you remember, when we were talking about ESG a lot and DEI, a big part of that was to sit down and have conversations around what do we really need to do as an organization. It's the same thing with AI. You have to look at it as anything new. I also compare it to when we got the internet, right? When AOL and email came out, everyone was completely like going nuts. But really, the honest truth is you have to look at it from an organizational standpoint. It's organization specific. And that's one of the things we drive home with our clients to say, all right, let's talk about what you want to achieve. What are your strategic goals? What processes are you trying to speed up, automate? Where do you think you have a true opportunity? Because I've seen organizations really fail at bringing in AI. And then next thing you know, they're firing people because they think that the AI is going to fix it. Or they think they're signing up for a large language model and it's really agentic AI behind the scenes. And they have no clue how to manage AI agents. And so having those honest conversations, they don't have to be public, right? They're internal conversations where you talk about what is it that we're trying to achieve with AI? Are we just trying to be on Becker's as being one of those organizations that just implemented this newly great revenue cycle automation? Or is this really beneficial to our organization? Not every organization requires it.
And there's an interesting corollary that that I just sort of thought of as you said that, kind of relative to the ESG thing. Like, is our ESG initiative just to be sort of greenwashing and say, look how great we are? Or is it like a true commitment to it? And to your point, it's like, until you're starting to have those conversations, there's probably use cases that we can't even think of that are being used in different groups within our organization. We have to get out there. Katrina said something brilliant here, which I misspelled, but you got what I meant. She said, I believe one of the biggest risks is that we view AI as an efficiency tool and not an agent that can dictate human input and decision-making. Phenomenal. Yeah. There's a lot of nuance in that, but I think that she's absolutely spot on. And that's a brilliant comment in the chat there.
Yep. Yeah. And someone else had said, let's not start with just let's use AI. A lot of organizations are doing that. Like, oh, we want to use AI. Everybody else is using AI. But you really have to look at you. It's kind of like, I don't buy squash all the time because we don't eat squash in my house. And that's just the way you have to look at it. Like, what is the preference? What's the reason? What's the rationale? And why are we really doing this? And can we really manage the outcomes associated with the type of AI we're integrating?
Allegra's got a great question here. She said, from your perspective, where do organizations most often underestimate AI risk in regulated healthcare environments? Phenomenal question.
Yeah, I think they underestimate human behavior, right? Because Agree. AI is going to be what it's going to be, right? The vendors, in my opinion, the ones that I've been talking to have been really forthcoming about, hey, look, this is a large language model. I'm starting to see more and more disclaimers around AI, like you should be validating more, check for accuracy. We're not liable for this. And I think one of the things that we need to pay attention to that, right? That alone is saying that they are disclosing openly that this may not do everything that you think it's going to do. And so you have to really train people. And I keep using the word collaborators, right? At this point, humans with AI are collaborators. Yes, the AI is doing the heavy lift, but there is still very much so an oversight, a redirection, and just a monitoring aspect that is now going to come out of AI. If you're in touch with what's happening in the AI world, you'll see that anyone who's talking about AI is using the word collaboration, and that's for a reason, because you still absolutely need that human intervention aspect. So I would say not having that collaboration portion tied down before you implement AI is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, it creates the opportunity for us to kind of move up and live or spend more of our time in this sort of abstraction layer, this sort of orchestration layer, where we can apply the frameworks or apply the tool sets that we've built over time, and less of our time kind of pushing the papers around that give us the output that we need in order to like exhibit those things. But without that sort of collaboration, I think that's a phenomenal answer, of course. I would also say there are all these different industries that are trying to leverage AI to do their jobs, right? You're seeing it in finance, you're seeing it in trading, you're seeing it in, coding and all those kinds of things. And these are all coming out of this, like kind of the same base tool, you know what I'm saying? The same sort of ingredient. And folks are seeing different problems in these different realms that I think if we're tuned into those, we can probably borrow from and again, help us accelerate seeing around the curve like we're always talking about. One example to kind of overcome one example of what I'm talking about is that you're starting to see a lot of these agentic swarms for, in the coding field where they're building, AI generated code, and then they're going to have another sort of agent that's like an adversarial code reviewer whose job is to just find holes in the code, because AI is going to confidently, it's trained itself to confidently come forward with an answer. And we know that the hallucination risk is impossible mathematically to eliminate. So putting those kind of guardrails with another AI to like be that adversarial reviewer can, help reduce some of those, hallucination risks that we're talking about. So I'm only bringing that up to say that like there are clues in other industries that we as compliance should be borrowing from and at least be kind of tuned into from a conceptual perspective, because those are all things that we can probably borrow from. And there's probably ways that, as we as a circulatory system of the organization are going to be touching different parts of the organization that are going to be, presumably underneath whatever AI policy we're talking about, or whatever, AI leverage that a different department is going to get from that actual tool that can help us be a little bit more effective. A lot of great questions in the chat I'll come to in a second. But, Leslie, you built your career at this sort of intersection of like coding, auditing, and compliance. And, this introduction of AI has changed things. How do you see it sort of changing the nature of the risk you're seeing in the healthcare organizations compared to even 2 or 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, well, I recently talked about this at AHLA. One of the things that I'm seeing when it comes to risk is AI is producing a lot more than any human could ever do, right? As far as the volume that it puts out. The scary thing about that is it's creating patterns, right? That generally, if you think about it, years ago would probably take maybe 2-3 years or even maybe a year, depending on the organization. It's producing more. And so with more comes more risk. And one of the things that I always kind of caution people on is the False Claims Act, right? So how does the government identify intent? Usually it's based on patterns. And AI can quickly create and generate patterns because of the volume that it's producing. And so one of the things I talk to a lot of our clients about are those beta testing, right? Those trial runs. I'm seeing a lot of organizations, some are doing that really well and some aren't, where they're not running trials to see like, okay, well, simple, is this producing the outcome that the vendor said it was going to do? Let's test run a couple of things to see if the way the model was trained is conducive for what we're doing. Does this fall in line with our policies? How are they using the data, right? Because someone put in the chat, and it's a valid point, that sometimes some of these AI companies are utilizing your data to train their models, right? And you don't know about that. You're not asking those questions. And so I really, really think that one of the missteps that is happening right now is this is just like anything else, right? Before you buy a car, you test drive it. And the fact that we're not test driving it because it's cool and shiny and new and everybody's saying all of these wonderful things that they could do is concerning, right? For the organizations that are doing it, kudos to you. But for the ones that think that they don't have the time, you absolutely need to slow down and test. And I think that's a big area that needs to be talked about a lot more. What does testing look like? And what does backing away look like, right? Once you realize that the testing is not working, how do you go back to the vendor and ask them questions to help them either redirect or just to say, you know what, this is not working for me and move on to the next vendor, or even deciding maybe we're not ready for this type of technology, for this process for our organization. So there's a lot there to unpack for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot there. And something you said earlier kind of reminded me that like we're in this new era of abundance. There was a lot of scarcity before in terms of getting work done. That's kind of going away in a lot of ways. So a lot of the constraints on us doing our jobs are, in theory, maybe being reduced to some degree. That's an opportunity, but I think the corresponding threat is that it's opening up a whole new sort of bouquet of risks that we need to be able to wrap our minds around. And we got to get smart on this stuff. Marco, the one and only Marco, has a great question. Thanks for this question, Marco. How do we get additional training approved in healthcare? We already have a huge cost of training for the feds, for the state, OSHA, et cetera, as well as what the third-party payers demand of us. We get major pushback from additional training beyond compliance training and fraud, waste, and abuse training. What advice would you give Marco, or maybe do you have any ideas on how he could reframe the type of AI training we're talking about so that he's not faced with that same pushback that he's getting for these sort of major pillars?
Yeah, so one of the things that I have been recommending and talking about is that artificial intelligence should be one of the key. I know there's 7 elements of compliance, but artificial intelligence at this point should be an eighth one. And it should be on your work plan separately. It should be identifiable risk associated with it for the organization based off of whatever the strategic plan is when it comes to technology and the use of AI. And so I think carving it out that way, right, starts it puts the spotlight on the risk associated with it, and then all of the important things that we do to mitigate risk from a compliance standpoint. I've seen this embraced really well at many different organizations, from a board level, from a senior executive level, and then kind of making its way down, the importance of it. And so I would recommend, I've been saying for a long time that the OIG and HHS are going to absolutely create this 8th element. I think that's going to expand and maybe go into 9 and 10, depending on which way we go. But proactively looking at it from that standpoint to justify it. Because what's happening now is a lot of people are saying, oh my God, AI is here. What do we do? You have to stop saying, what do we do? You have to start doing, right? You have to think logically. How do we mitigate risk today? Well, our compliance work plan for compliance professionals is our source of truth, right? It's our way that we convey to the organization. This is what we're focused on from a risk-based standpoint, this is what's important to us. Updating your assessments, your compliance program assessments, including conversations in there with your operational leaders, asking questions about your assessments. In fact, for us, on our AI readiness assessment, that's one of the questions that we ask organizations. How are you incorporating AI risk into your compliance programs? What does that look like? And so I think that's a good, strong basis for it, and it'll just give you the oomph that you need to carry it through.
Yeah, until that eighth is added, what I don't want to happen in our industry is that until that eighth element is added, AI as the eighth element, until that's added, it's not like we should wait until that's added to say, okay, I got to start incorporating it. Like we need to use that as a guide, and we need to also cut that against, or square that against the real risks that we're seeing, and we need to make our work plan, as you said, really work for ourselves and work for our business. So we should absolutely be incorporating that stuff right now in real time. So you kind of alluded to this a little bit previously, but I want to talk about how we're thinking about False Claims Act exposure when it comes to AI-generated coding recommendations, especially when errors happen at scale. What do we do? How should we think about that when it's traced back to an algorithm?
Yeah. So one of the things I have been talking a lot about is who trained the model. Before you even implement coding software tools, especially anything, a large language model, generative AI, where did the training come from? How did it learn? What are the references that were utilized? A lot of people are missing this basic question, or missing the opportunity to ask this basic question around coding and all of the different vendors that are out there. The other thing is, it's something that I came across, right? When speaking about training, sometimes these models are trained by individuals who are clinical and have a coding background, right? From a traditional coding standpoint, that takes a turn, right? Because I always make the joke with all the coders that I have. I know you've been in the field for a long time, but you are not Doogie Howser, right? You cannot look at a lab report and say, oh, their total cholesterol is over 200. They have hyperlipidemia. The doctor just forgot to do that. But when you have someone who's trained AI that has that background to be able to do that, and then they also have the coding expertise, that in itself causes a major issue, because now you have a technology or tool that probably sits outside of what you allow your coders to do from a scope of practice, that sits outside of their scope, right, as non-clinical professionals. And so having these early proactive conversations and not waiting until the technology is implemented. I actually have helped organizations develop sort of these pre-coding technology questions that they should be asking, right? And then from there, I think one of the other, I know you probably didn't ask this, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the other things that is really important, probably, one of the things that is really important also too is really understanding, how do you redirect the AI, right? Who's in your organization? If you find an issue, let's just say it's a pending modifier 59. And let's say the 59 application is coming from an AI agent that comes from Claude or Anthropic. How do you redirect it? How do you correct that before it sends out thousands of claims? And so there's just a lot of reactive actions versus proactive. And for compliance professionals, this has been a challenge because, it's not to put down us as a complete industry, because we're few far in between. We're experts in our field, but we have developed this sort of reactive approach to how we manage compliance in our organizations because we're limited. Let's just face it, we are. However, we've got to move away from that because AI is going to produce a lot. And if we don't have some of those proactive approaches or proactive questions or proactive measures in place, it's not going to be good at all. So.
Yeah, and I think this new shift that's happening, this new era we're stepping into, provides us with a unique opportunity as an industry to change how we're showing up, to build some of these new muscles in a time where the value that these new muscles can provide are going to be disproportionately higher than our kind of historical sort of reactive, as you said, approach to things. Like now is a really unique opportunity for us to really bend the curve on our industry. I just don't think that's what's got us here is going to get us there. I don't think like we're going to transform and look way different than we are 10 years ago unless we start doing things different right now. And now is a really unique time for us to apply these risk management frameworks that we've developed over years. And, we're just applying a new risk lens, or we're just applying the same sort of risk lenses that we all have to this new technology that is so transformative, that is really getting a lot of attention. So when we can fly in that kind of slipstream, and back to kind of Marco's question, I think we can get a lot unlocked. Back to Marco's question, when we can hide the, when we can hide the medicine in the peanut butter, like that's how I feed my dog his medicine, like if we can hide the medicine in the peanut butter, if we can hide the training in the AI enablement training, well, that now sounds a lot different than yet another sort of piece of compliance training that you're going to get that kind of, resistance to, you know what I mean? So I think we have to be smart, and we have to be proactive, and we have to kind of figure out a way to pick the lock. So when we're, everybody's talking about human in the loop, and I don't know, I have a whole kind of debate hopefully coming with my good friend Reed Blackman around the value of human in the loop and so forth. But a lot of us kind of think there's at least some security in having a human in the loop oversight. So like, what does a realistic human in the loop oversight process look like for an organization that's already started to kind of, deploy these tools? Like, what do you think a minimum threshold for due diligence is to avoid this term, this reckless disregard that you talk about?
Yeah. So human in the loop, I'm not a big fan of that term either, because I just, it's not.
I want an AI in the loop. You know what I mean? Just kidding.
Right. But I mean, the best use of it is having an individual who has expertise in that given area. I look at it as beginning, middle, and end, right? So beginning is all of the proactive things that we're talking about. You're asking the vendor questions about proprietary information, training data, who trained it, how does the AI develop, or will it evolve, right? Especially generative AI and AI agents. I call it the Wild Wild West. You have to really know its decision-making and understand it. And then middle being just oversight over the function itself. And so oversight, someone had asked, like, what is the most effective way you've seen organizations validate AI? Benchmarking. I've seen them actually put together benchmarking, sort of just KPIs for the AI itself. Like, is it producing what it said? Is it referencing the references that they told us? What does the output look like? How many times do I have to go in and redirect it? How many times does it stall? There's a lot of different elements there. And then at the end, on the outcome side, right? Outcome meaning once we trial run it, we see how it's going, how do we scale it up? I think one of the things that people are doing is they're picking an area and they're saying, let's scale this area. That's a bad decision, right? It's better to take a look at it from a smaller standpoint, which is why I like organizations that are looking at things like computer assisted coding and autonomous coding in one particular area, seeing how well it works and seeing where they can apply that logic to a similar space, seeing how they control it, and then using that to put it back into I'm losing the word here, but their benchmark, their dashboard, rather, their AI dashboard that they're creating to kind of measure, are we in a position to really scale? And dashboarding, everybody's been asking a lot for examples of dashboarding. It really depends on the type of tools that you're integrating or implementing in your organization, the way you identify what measures are important to capture within that dashboard. And so we have given examples related to revenue cycle and coding. That's something as simple as quality. Like, for instance, does the computer assisted coding or the autonomous coding have the ability for you to see how often your coders rely on the logic, or do they override, right? Little simple reporting aspects like that we would be doing without AI. Right? That's the whole QA process. But we have a hard time in the AI arena translating that to, okay, all those same things that we did manually, all of those same things still apply. And so I've seen a lot of really great organizations. If you think back to when we were implementing EMRs, EHRs, we had these huge teams, right? We had these 3-week education training centers. We had all of this dashboarding. We had doctors coming in. I was in the hospital setting. I know how 6, 7 o'clock at night, they're sitting with them. We're doing more training. We have to kind of look at it the same way, because the difference between, I believe EMR and EHRs changed the way we deliver healthcare, but AI is going to replace processes. And that's what everybody keeps talking about, replacing people. The scary thing for healthcare is going to replace processes. All of the antiquated aspects that we have, that we manually do from day to day, is what AI is changing. And everyone can't get their mind around that. But it is a really innovative time, right, to create new processes, new policies, and new procedures to kind of calm all of the fear and really just say, listen, when you bring in technology, AI, it's going to replace a process. It is. And you have to evaluate how. Most of the time, it'll be a very manual and tedious process. If it's not replacing it, it's going to create some efficiencies around it. And you just have to be proactive about it.
That's such a powerful reframe to say this is not just going to like replace people, it's going to replace process. That changes the entire scope of how we can look at this as a concept and how this is going to kind of trickle through our organizations, because it's going to be well beyond what we can even imagine right now. And we're the forward thinkers here, everybody on this webinar. Okay. So like it's even beyond what we can imagine. So let's talk a little bit about like when a healthcare organization brings on an AI vendor, whether it's an ambient scribe or it's a coding assistant or something like that, like what are some of the compliance obligations that they're taking on that they might not fully realize, either in the compliance department or at the organizational level? Because it's not like every single, decision is running through compliance yet. What are some of those obligations that are, folks taking on maybe inadvertently or unbeknownst to them?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that, there's many things, but one of the things that comes to mind is contractually, liability is a huge thing. You have to be really careful because vendors will use a lot of, they're all words that we've heard before. They mean nothing other than we just don't want to tell you how we're doing it because we may not even know. A lot of these technical experts have the technical expertise to produce the AI, but they don't understand the regulatory environment in healthcare, right? They don't understand process. They don't understand operations. And so getting them to translate that to help you understand liability, it's a challenge. There's a language barrier there. And so contractually, when you're talking about, especially around coding and billing tools, when you're talking about liability, where does it lie? Who's responsible? What happens? What does it look like from a privacy standpoint? Because a lot of vendors are saying they have these cloud-based, they're partnered with Amazon, they're partnered with, whoever else, and it's HIPAA compliant. But what happens if something happens with that cloud-based server? Who's responsible? Who's liable? And so again, you don't want to wait for the outcome to happen for you to have this conversation. This should be early on, right? And I will tell you, both legal and compliance should be looking at these AI contracts. I have been preaching this
from day
left,
one.
right, front, and center.
Totally.
Yeah, they should be front and center. I worked in hospital settings. I know all about the handshake arrangements that sometimes are made between physician and vendor or operational leader and vendor, and you don't know about it till a year later. I mean, that's just the reality. But we can't have that, right? There is a lot of risk that is known and unknown that you have to have the right experts looking at these contracts across the board. And honestly, it's no shade to operational leaders, but compliance and legal folks are in the position. They know the regulatory environment. And even if they don't understand all of the technical jargon, they at least know these are the laws and rules that we do not want to break. And what is in the contract to help us get us there? Your indemnification, within your BAA, what does this really look like? And you don't want these verbal responses from the vendors that are just like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. We have this. We're a lot of them will say we're SOC 2, which is great and all of that good stuff. But you want to go deeper. You want to make sure that this translates to contracts. So I cannot stress enough the liability conversation. And I think
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No.
I mean, whenever you say I think, I want to hear what you're going to say because.
No, I keep talking about the fact that as the healthcare industry is so big, we have individuals from all different backgrounds, right? We all know we're smart enough to know that healthcare does not just consist of doctors and nurses, right? Sometimes that's the way it's perceived from an out, even though they're very valuable professionals. One of the things that organizations are not looking at are the various different levels of understanding, education and background that they have to consider when it comes to the use of AI and the outcome, and those who are going to be monitoring or collaborating with it. I liken it to, in some certain states or certain healthcare organizations, we have to bring our policies to the reading level that the state mandates, right? Because our workforce is so diverse. And so when it comes to education, we are missing the opportunity to really look at what are some of the barriers here that are going to be created, not just by AI, but also by human behavior, right? What do we need to evaluate? What policies are in place that just make no sense whatsoever? There's a lot of technical language. Who can comply with that? So there's that aspect too, as well.
So I want to circle back to something you were saying, or what we're talking about. A lot of the legal language, or some of these, some of these terms or provisions that might be missing from like vendor agreements. So what do you see that's missing kind of consistently, or what do you think a compliance team or a compliance officer should be pushing legal teams to include before they're signing these kinds of things?
Yeah, anything. So it's not include, but if the vendor is not disclosing the proprietary, quote unquote, where the algorithm came from, how it's managed, how do we redirect it? If all of that is being listed as proprietary, we can't share, run. Don't even bother with them, right? Because at the end of the day, honestly, the compliance and legal person may not fully understand all the technical aspect of it. You may have individuals on your IT teams, your business intelligence teams that may be able to collaborate better on this. But that proprietary clause, it's just garbage, right? There's no way in any form, especially when we're talking about revenue cycle, billing, and coding, that they should not be disclosing how that model was trained, where did it come from, how do we redirect it? Why is that considered to be proprietary? So it's just, I will tell you, the proprietary conversation usually has a lot of embedded risk, a lot. And sometimes, as compliance and legal professionals, we'll step back and say, oh, they said it's proprietary. Okay, no, you can't do that with AI software. It's really, really important.
I think particularly around the coding piece,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And you're starting to see it in other aspects, right? Even clinical, you've got your clinical decision maker, clinical decision making tools as well. To me, those are really scary. If you, it's almost like, it's like getting in Waymo in a car.
Buckle up.
And I mean, it's a scary aspect not to know or have experience. Like, how long has this car been driving? Or who actually trained this car how to drive? It's an important part of the process that you need to think about.
So let's say a vendor's like AI tool causes a HIPAA breach or generates a billing pattern that ends up triggering an audit, how do you make sure the organization isn't left holding the bag entirely? And how do we, as compliance folks, kind of plan for that potentiality?
Yeah, and again, the multi collaborative team of legal, compliance, quality. And if you're in a smaller organization and these things don't exist for you, or you consult out, this is the time to consult in, right? Having the right people evaluate the contracts, where the risk lies, before you get to a False Claims Act issue or a HIPAA violation, so that you understand where the liability is, what happens, how do our policies now change, right? When it comes to this type of technology, how do we, for something as simple as with coding, right? Let's just say it's generative AI or it's agentic AI that is ran off of generative AI, and it starts to pull in references or coding clinics that are made up. This is real stuff, right? It does. It'll start to hallucinate and create its own outcome, so to speak. Who manages that? Who's responsible for that? Is it the provider who continues to now code against those hallucinated thoughts or rules that this AI has now created? Or is it the vendor? Is a vendor responsible for those hallucinations? Biases, right? How do we handle biases that are now developed in the data? Because one thing to think about is these models are not perfect. there are so many studies out there. Harvard Business Review and BRG are talking about the errors associated with AI today. It's insane. If you have not reviewed them,
It's
you need
crazy.
to take a look at it.
It's crazy.
Wild. It's wild. And so, thinking about it, these are new types of risk for compliance, which is why I go back to my earlier comment about AI being an eighth compliance element and putting it up as one, putting it on your compliance plan as one. There's so many new things. Hallucinations and biases scare me because it can create a whirlwind of bad data and a whirlwind of bad outcomes for an organization. So in going back to your original question, legal compliance, your medical decision-making folks your clinical folks can come in together. This is where I always say, let's hold hand, ring around the rosy. We should have been doing this all along in healthcare, but now it's a really important part. Like you all have to work together to make sure that the risk is identifiable and who's accountable for it is really important.
I mean, there's this whole other concept here, we're going to kind of talk about hallucination and, bias and stuff like that in a second here. But sometimes I feel like when we're buying AI tools or we're bringing AI in, we just know about these concepts at like so high of a level. Oh, I heard about this hallucination risk, but like what causes the hallucination risk and how does the it's almost like we think about hallucination risk as just sort of a fixed risk. And I'm saying it's not a fixed risk. It's a function of the context window at some level, right? There's this sort of underlying foundational mathematical, existence of hallucination risk that changes as the context window changes as well. And that context window is a function of which model is being used, to your point. So I'm just saying, if you have a massive, and you might not see this unless you're playing around with AI yourself, but if you're in one chat that you've been in for 2 weeks and you haven't changed that at all, and there's no sort of like auto compact thing going on in that chat, you're going to have a ton of hallucinations, or at least a much higher rate than if you're kind of opening up a new chat. How is that context window managed within the tool? And how does the way that context window is managed in the tool that you're utilizing to code, for example, how, if you don't have any understanding on how that's managed, there is a risk that the hallucinations can sort of change over time. Is that context window on the user level? Is it on the organizational level, right? Like there's a lot of these kinds of questions that we don't have to be like total AI nerds, but we should know a little bit enough about it, back to your first point, just by having some conversations and kind of scratching the surface on it and just kind of having that sort of natural human curiosity. I think when we get exposed to some new information, that's all going to go into our golden brains of compliance and our golden risk management brains. And we're going to start to see, oh man, what are sort of the next, implications of this? That's going to help us to really be that value to the organization and help us to kind of elevate our whole profession, I think. Okay.
Yeah. So and I was going to add to your point earlier. One of the things that everybody should be doing is actually playing in the models themselves, right? You should actually, because you can't recognize what you've never experienced. And so when it comes to hallucinations and biases, you have to be able to recognize them by way of experience. So if the only model you're playing in today is ChatGPT, big problem, right? There's Perplexity. There is Claude. There is Grok. There's all of these different tools that are out there that are being used. And so you have to really test it. I really wanted to, Scott put a comment about a pushback. AI doesn't require a different approach. It requires the tools we should have been using the whole time. And I agree with you, Scott, to an extent, right? What has happened with AI is that AI has sped up all of the advancements that we should have been making the whole time as an industry. However, tools, resources, everything else that has come, COVID, that has come about, it's really just slowed down that process. And unfortunately, where we should have been, now AI is going to triple very quickly in a matter of a year. There used to be a time, even just from an investment standpoint, that AI was optional, right? They would invest more money in a company if you had AI. That's great. Now it's a core part of what they're looking for from an investment dollars. That happened in less than a 9-month period. So I agree with what he's saying as far as where we should have been. But I think as an industry, what we missed is all of the different factors that slow down advancement. And now we're walking into a place where it's going to propel us faster than any of us could prepare for. So
yeah. As the natural peacemaker, I think you guys are both right. And I think what Scott is saying here is that managing AI risk is not really that different than managing any other risk. It's the same sort of tool set of risk management and risk mitigation that we just need to apply to this new technology. Albeit a faster technology, a thing that's, kind of showing up in different ways. The same sort of fundamentals, the same compliance or risk management fundamentals that we have put into our toolbox over the last X amount of years that we've been in this industry apply directly to this new risk area or this new technology. So congratulations, you guys are both right in my mind. All right, let's talk about let's talk about Section 1557 obligations. Section 1557 patient care decision support tool provisions took effect in May of 2025. How well do you know those? Just kidding. How well do you think healthcare organizations actually understand the compliance obligations that this creates, and where do you think some of those biggest blind spots are?
I don't think healthcare organizations really understand it, right? And they're applying it to tools such as, they're still looking at speech recognition tools or the ambient, the scribe tools. And I think that 1557 language is going to transition to expand on it, on what's happening right now. Again, I think from a legal standpoint, looking at that language and saying to yourselves as an organization and saying, okay, are we anywhere remotely near what 1557 says on just clinical decision? Because CDSMs is one particular type of technology, but I think they're going to use that language to then expand that to all of the different types of AI that are popping up. And so, I'm waiting to see where the expansion is going to come into play, because that's coming really soon.
So, we've been talking about sort of, it's been funny to see. So I've been like an AI nerd from like day one, and it's been funny to see how, certain conversations or certain concerns that maybe start over here, we start to see, over here as, AI proliferates into a new realm or a, new department or a new, industry. And so, there was a lot of talk about AI bias in terms of hiring. But I want to kind of pivot that into how AI tools are trained. AI tools are trained on this historical data, and they can embed and amplify existing disparities, in care, right? So from a compliance perspective, how do you think folks can audit that for that kind of risk when the tool itself may not surface it transparently? Not, of course, in like hiring, but in terms of like providing actual care and aiding in the care decisions that are being made. How do we audit that and ensure that, model errors have not made their way into, from a bias perspective, made their way into kind of the answer that it's providing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of unique ways in which you can do that. And it's interesting because I've seen really good outcomes even within AI itself it produced. So Claude is a tool. I don't have any financial anything associated with them, but when it comes to large language models or the way it produces data, the way it interprets it and understands it, is a very good tool to utilize. One of the things that I like about AI, or the abilities that Claude and even ChatGPT have created, Perplexity is another one. I named that earlier. Copilot is another one. I'm not a huge fan of Copilot, but that's my own personal preference. But you have the ability to train it based off of documents that you can upload. And keep in mind, we don't upload PHI or anything of that nature. But you can actually use those documents, this AI guidance, these public documents that are out there from the different federal agencies, to help the AI train on, okay, how can we develop tools to monitor you? You're asking AI, and it does it really, really well. And this is where compliance professionals can utilize AI in a way that's helpful to them, right? For instance, you can take something as simple as a new LCD, which, I know there's a lot of generational conversations on why this, some people like this, some people don't, but it does help. As being a compliance professional for many years, this is something that I do advocate for. It makes your life easier. It helps you to focus on more other risk areas, but you can upload a public LCD document or maybe a new rule or reg and ask the AI to help you develop, okay, what are the summary reports, the bullet points here, the summary points, and then if it's a new regulatory requirement, what are ways in which I can audit this? And the outcome that comes out of this is fantastic. They're just conventional prompts that you can use based on actual reference data that is true and tried, right? This is not made up data. You're actually feeding it the data itself. And I think a lot of people are missing the opportunity from a compliance standpoint to help them create not more work, but more accuracy around the questions that we're asking when it comes to how we audit the tool itself and how then does the regulatory requirements apply to that. So I would recommend doing, if you haven't tried it, try it, right? Use Claude, use ChatGPT. Perplexity is a research-based sort of niche tool it basically prides itself on being primary source references. So it's very different from ChatGPT and Claude, where it's making up references sometimes, as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, a good hack kind of to that point is to, do some of your research with Perplexity, get some of those primary sources and use those as the basis for the prompt engineering that you might be doing with Claude or something like that. And just to kind of dovetail on what you're just saying there, we just can't let perfect be the enemy of good. Exactly. Using that to get 80% of the way there and being in an iterative mindset gives us a lot of freedom to get moving with things. If we're so concerned about the output, we really shouldn't be concerned about the output. If we're doing our own diligence and we're owning whatever work product we're putting forward, we can pass that through our own sort of filter, our own sort of intelligence and our own experience. It has the opportunity to get you 80% of the way there, or be a good brainstorm partner to build something that is going to get you, that's going to help you move forward. I mean, the name of the game is really going to be speed in this next era that we're stepping into. And we have to get better at applying, something that Scott said, I think in the chat. The speed with which we can apply our expertise is really going to be what comes to define our industry. If we get really good at creating opportunities to apply our expertise at a high velocity, our industry is going to be extremely powerful. It's going to be extremely influential and drive a lot of impact in our organizations, both by reducing risk, improving, all the things that come along with a strong compliance program. But if we, again, are bringing our old heuristics into this new realm and we're too slow, that's not going to be good. Okay, so we got about 5 minutes left.
Sure.
This is going to be dealer's choice. You're the dealer. So you want to go through, I have a couple of other questions here, but there's also a couple of other questions in the chat. Getting some great feedback as usual, Leslie. You want to go to a couple of questions in the chat?
I love talking about it. And I really appreciate all the different perspectives because it just really adds to my own experience too. So this is great.
Yeah. All right. So dealer's choice sounds like you pushed it back to me. So
yes. It's on you.
All right. So this is a great, another one from Allegra. She's on fire today. What's the most effective way you've seen organizations validate AI outputs in real time?
Yeah, just the mock environments, the trial runs, right? If you're getting ready to sign up for a tool, testing it out on maybe a smaller set of claims. You remember, I keep going back to EMR and EHR implementations. We have the fake patients to teach our physicians how to do it. That should be the same sort of mentality, right? Using sort of this trial run session to kind of test it. So yeah.
Great comment here from Scott, my man Scott. He said, circling back to my original comment, AI are tools. Pick the tool which may not be Gen AI for the task. Often ML will be better at identifying data, outliers, and risks. All right.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and then one quick bonus question from Gwen. You were talking about some of those pre-coding questions and that it's a kind of a best practice to ask those. And she asked, do you have some examples of pre-coding questions to ask?
Yeah, so again, who trained the model for this? What type of AI is it utilizing? Who trained it? One of the other things is how does the model update itself on new rules and regs related to coding? Remember, coding rules and regulations change all the time.
Good
quarterly.
point.
So where are those reference pulled from? How did you audit? How many test claims were run through the training period? Who monitored that? Did you have a third-party vendor take a look at it, and what was their accuracy rate on it? So they're just a few. I have a bunch more. I'm happy to send them via LinkedIn if you just connect with me. But yes, there's quite a few.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are right at time. So let's get a massive emoji explosion for the one and only Leslie Boles. Leslie, thank you so much for coming on. You have a standing invite, of course, anytime you want to come. Every time you come on here, you add so much value. And I love these Tuesday healthcare sessions, man. It's like we're really just kind of solving the world's problems together. So thank you so much. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Got another home run episode coming up Thursday. So hopefully you guys can be there at 12 Eastern this Thursday. Coolest place to be. See ya.